look, we had our first look at Oklahoma, and the guy he's like a one-man tout service for all things Oklahoma. I kid because I love. That's RJ Young, college football analyst for Fox Sports, host of the number one show podcast on Fox Sports, covering all things college football. Okay, so Lincoln Riley leaves. You're an Oklahoma guy. You've been having a lot of fun at Lincoln Riley's lack of success at SC. What do you think after watching last night?
I think he gave me a reason to watch SC the rest of the year in a different light. They won a game that I didn't think they were going to win, full stop. You're trailing in the fourth quarter. We've seen Lincoln Riley's clock management, which is not unlike managing a broken clock at times, and he did it to end the first half. We saw the missed field goal from the kicker, so I'm not real sure that that's where he wants to do it. And they hadn't been able to run the ball well at all night, and Woody Marks called game. Also saw a safety just not hit his run fit, and for whatever reason decided to go cover a tight end that wasn't going out to a pattern, and that's how they end up winning the game. But they also got a really cool schedule the rest of the way. A couple weeks from now, they get Michigan, and then, of course, they get Notre Dame at the end of the season, which could be two undefeated teams. I don't know, especially knowing what we know about Notre Dame and what's left of their cupcake schedule. If USC is legit, I'm fine with this. I am, Doug, but we know that Lincoln Riley can win a big game in the regular season. That's not the question. The question is, can you win a conference championship in the Big Ten, and can you win a single college football playoff game? Because he still has not.
RJ, how do you explain the other sideline? I know it's not all on Brian Kelly, but this is the fifth straight opener that LSU has lost. We know about Brian Kelly's post-game, I don't know if it's the tirade, but a bit of a rant yesterday. But what is the reason why LSU cannot grab a week one victory in college football?
I think it's all over the map, but the only common denominator has been Brian Kelly, right? Both of the coordinators from last year that lost to Florida State, they're gone. The guys you brought in are good. Like, I like Joe Sloan, and I really like me some Blake Baker. I will let you go with the defense being young. Like, they're starting a true freshman at corner in P.J. Woodland, who really is going to be a star when he grows up, but he's got to grow up. Whit Weeks has got a lot there. That was big number 40 for the folks that are watching on television. I really think they got a great motor there, and they haven't been in that position before where they've had to finish. But when Brian Kelly is yelling and ranting about why do I keep saying the same things over and over again, that's called coaching. And if you find yourself repeating yourself, it's either because it hasn't gotten through or you haven't properly communicated. I think it's just him. I sincerely believe that. It is not incumbent upon the kids to get to know you. It is incumbent upon you to get to know the kids. So if you're yelling at them and they're not getting it, you need to stop yelling. If yelling at them gets them in a position to win, keep yelling. I really am going to put this back on Brian Kelly's shoulders.
Well, we also don't know how it's been communicated, if he's yelling there because he taught it time and again in the offseason. And to be fair, RJ Young joining us here, the number one podcast, along with Dan Byer. I'm Doug Gottlieb. This is the Dan Patrick Show, Fox Sports Radio. I know when we get to the NFL draft in Green Bay in April, there's going to be an overwhelming number of SEC players taken. But I also know that I just watched Florida lose at home. I watched A&M lose at home. I watched LSU lose in a neutral site, granted in the Western United States, but it was at least 60-40 in terms of their fan base. And so and look, Georgia looked awesome, and Bama looked awesome. So it's not the whole SEC, right? It's not the whole SEC. But the point is that, RJ, how do we calculate who's actually a really good team and a really good conference and sort of disassociate from the NFL draft? Because I do think that we fall back on look at the SEC and all the guys are drafted. Yeah, but they lost games at home in terms of the grand calculation.
This is where it gets fun for me. I think the NFL draft makes it much simpler and easier to quantitatively qualify each one of these teams. Did you have more draft picks or not? Usually the team that wins the national championship, they're going to have more draft picks than everybody else. That's just what happens here. But as we're going through the season, one of the things I take a look at is how good do we think you are, and then did you meet that expectation? So a great example from this weekend is Georgia beating Clemson 34-3 and Ohio State beating Akron 52-6. One weighs more than the other. One, Clemson is a very good football team who ran into a juggernaut that is Georgia, who decided to show us all why they have won 2 national championships the last 3 years and why they have gone 43-45 over the last 3 years and have won 40 consecutive regular season games. And by the way, the losses are to Alabama, but that's when Nick Saban was coaching Alabama, and he ain't coaching Alabama anymore. You hold Clemson to 3. Ohio State, who we all think is really, really good and probably ends up playing Georgia in the national championship game, got off to a very slow start against the Akron Zips at home, not a neutral site. And the Akron Zips have more in common with an FCS opponent than they do the Buckeyes. And to add to that, the Akron Zips went up 3-0 on the Buckeyes to start the game. That's not supposed to happen either. So as we're taking a look at who did what, I'm looking at Notre Dame beat Texas A&M on the road by 10. Oregon beat Idaho at home by 10. And we're talking about Idaho versus A&M. And you know, like I know, those are leagues apart and as far as opponents. You keep doing that all the way down the schedule. You keep doing that all the way down the top 25. And you begin to understand what makes some of these teams good apart from who's getting drafted.
Complete side note, the number 1 college football show just blew past 100,000 subscribers recently on YouTube, and fast-paced to 200,000 subscribers. Just wanted to let you know that, Doug. The show is on fire. Colorado, anything different, RJ, from what we had from a year ago after their win on Thursday night against North Dakota State, or can we expect the same thing from the Buffaloes that we maybe saw last year?
I got to go with the second half of that, Dan. Like, my first thought was, damn, I hope so, right? You know, like, I really do. I love watching that football team play. Shedeur Sanders is a superstar. We know that. 445 against North Dakota State. There are only 2 quarterbacks in the last 20 years who have gone for 400 yards and 4 TDs in back-to-back season openers. One of them is Shedeur Sanders, and the other one is Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. Do with that what you're gonna, right? Travis Hunter, we know about. Jimmy Horn Jr. is an emerging star. But everywhere else, I got questions. They can't run the football. They can't stop the run. Nebraska has shown us they can run the football, 200 yards on the ground from their running backs against UTEP. And they got a guy that not only can spin it in Dylan Raiola, but he's doing the one thing I asked Nebraska quarterbacks to do this year after what we saw last year. He ain't turned the ball over yet. And if they can continue to hold the ball, they're going to be able to lean on you and perhaps run that 3-3 stack against Shedeur Sanders and make them force it down the field, and you can come away with a win. I think they traded out guys that were similar to the ones they had last year for this year when we're talking about Colorado, and I haven't seen a gel yet. I haven't seen them come together and be greater than the sum of their parts. But, again, you beat Nebraska, you go 2-0, and we're back to what we were doing last year. It's deeper into the season when we should be having this conversation, honestly, about Colorado to get a definitive understanding of whether or not something has changed. But right now, it looks a lot like it did last year.
Yeah, and I think they could even be a little bit better. But winning at Nebraska, winning at Colorado State, that'll be hard, even if the Big 12 isn't as difficult of a league. Okay, so what about Notre Dame? Like, at some point, we got to sit there and go, hey, we've always been critical of Notre Dame's lack of speed. Speed outside the numbers defensively, outstanding, and speed at the running back position, outstanding. Good quarterback. How legitimate do you believe Notre Dame is?
I think that they are in a position to play for a national championship because the schedule sets up for them, not unlike it did for Florida State last year, and they're going to get the benefit of the doubt if Riley Leonard stays healthy. I also think that back end, they got a secondary that can go. Like in Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison, they got one of the best safety corner tandems in all of football. Watts had 7 interceptions last year. He already has 1 against A&M to open the season. You're also looking at the schedule, and I got to tell you guys, between now and November 9th, they don't really play anybody. Not anybody that we care about. They get Florida State, who we'll see, right, how good they are by that time, and then they get SC to end this thing. But it's also set up in a way that they're doing something that no other Power 4 team gets to do. All the other Power 4 teams got to play 9 Power 4 opponents. Notre Dame's got to play 8. And not just that, Notre Dame doesn't have to play in a conference championship. So they're going to suck up one of those at-large bids and get a playoff game at South Bend. I don't like it. I think you should have to qualify for the college football playoff by having played in a conference championship. but we treat Notre Dame like Formula One treats Ferrari. We just kind of like having them around, and we let them do what they would like to because we really like seeing them on a football field. But I think on the football field, they're good. They just don't have an opportunity to really show it past this game. And I just really wanted to see them be tested. Like, Miami's not on their schedule. I would love to see Notre Dame play Miami this year. I would love to see just what Cam Ward would be able to do against that secondary and get a good read on who they are. But as it stands right now, I got a hard time leaving them out of the 12 playoff picture, only because they look good enough against A&M, and down the line, they'll have enough undefeated going on where they could probably lose a game and still make the college football playoff.
Do you like Fansville, those Dr. Pepper commercials, RJ? Are you a fan of those?
I am. I enjoyed Quinn Ewers getting to say, I made the playoffs without any backup. I was giggling, man. It's very well written. That's the thing. They're jokes.
Magnificent. I love them as well, and I haven't loved any of them more than I love the Quinn Ewers one this past weekend, which leads me to the Texas question. No doubt in the outcome against Colorado State, but there does seem to be a lot of cohesion in the quarterback hierarchy where Arch Manning comes in, throws a touchdown pass, and it's high fives all around, but there's no question on who is the starter. How is that the feeling that you get out of Austin with the Longhorns?
It absolutely is, and I think Steve Sarkisian does not get enough credit for how he has handled having Arch Manning on the depth chart and showing us Arch Manning and showing us he can spin it. And then you're talking about Quinn Ewers, who's also handled this with such grace and respect and aplomb. Like, he's doing all the right things that I want a quarterback to do if they're playing at the University of Texas and, dare I say, going to get drafted in the first round by some franchise that needs him next year. He's showing a lot of maturity at a place that it would have been easy for him to go, why are you still talking to me about Arch Manning? There's this famous photo last year. They brought Arch Manning to media days, and when he was there, all the reporters went to his table, crowded around, asked him questions. Quinn Ewers, the starting quarterback, pretty damn good, number 1 overall in 2022, and the starting quarterback at Texas is sitting there by himself, kind of looking over there with a kind of bemused look on his face, going, okay, that's how it's going. And not even that's how it's going to be, but just that's what it is to be at Texas. I also think that locker room wants to be behind Quinn Ewers because they've seen him do it, and they know what they have in him. It's nice to have an Arch Manning, but you know why Quinn Ewers is the number 1, and I really like their chances going into Ann Arbor to go get a W.
That is the one and only R.J. Young. Check out the number 1 show, podcast on Fox Sports. Check it out on YouTube as well. R.J., man, enjoy the weekend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Doug, Dan, thank you guys so much. Have a great Labor Day.